But for the dinner in Staple Inn, and but for the ring he carried in the breast-coat of his pocket, he would have drifted into their wedding day without another pause for real thought, loosely trusting that all would go well left alone. But that Sirius, putting him on his truth to the living and the dead, had brought him to a check. He must either give the ring to Rosa, or he must take it back. Once put into this narrowed way of action, it was curious that he began to consider Rosa's claims upon him more unselfishly than he had ever considered them before, and began to be less sure of himself than he had ever been in his easy-going days. "I will be guided by what she says, and by how we get on," was his decision, walking from the gatehouse to the nun's house. "Whatever comes of it, I will bear his words in mind, and try to be true to the living and the dead." Rosa was dressed for walking. She expected him. It was a bright, frosty day, and Miss Twinkleton had already graciously sanctioned fresh air. Thus they got out together before it became necessary for either Miss Twinkleton or the deputy high priest, Mrs. Tisher, to lay even so much as one of those usual offerings on the shrine of propriety. "My dear Eddy," said Rosa, when they had turned out of the High Street, and had got among the quiet walks in the neighbourhood of the cathedral and the river, "I want to say something very serious to you. I have been thinking about it for a long, long time." "I want to be serious with you too, Rosa dear. I mean to be serious and earnest." "Thank you, Eddy. And you will not think me unkind because I begin, will you? You will not think I speak for myself only because I speak first? That would not be generous, would it? And I know you are generous." He said, "I hope I am not ungenerous to you, Rosa." He called her Pussy no more. Never again. "And there is no fear," pursued Rosa, "of our quarrelling, is there? Because, Eddy," clasping her hand on his arm, "we have so much reason to be very lenient to each other." "We will be, Rosa." "That's a dear good boy. Eddy, let us be courageous. Let us change to brother and sister from this day forth." "Never be husband and wife?" "Never." Neither spoke again for a little while, but after that pause he said with some effort, "Of course I know that this has been in both our minds, Rosa, and of course I am in honour bound to confess freely that it does not originate with you." "No, nor with you, dear," she returned with pathetic earnestness. "That sprung up between us. You are not truly happy in our engagement, and I am not truly happy in it. Oh, I am so sorry, so sorry!" And there she broke into tears. "I am deeply sorry too, Rosa, deeply sorry for you." "And I for you, poor boy, and I for you." This pure young feeling, this gentle and forbearing feeling of each toward the other, brought with it its reward in a softening light that seemed to shine on their position. The relations between them did not look wilful or capricious or a failure in such a light. They became elevated into something more self-denying, honourable, affectionate, and true. "If we knew yesterday," said Rosa, as she dried her eyes, "and we did know yesterday, and on many, many yesterdays, that we were far from right together in those relations which were not of our own choosing, what better could we do to-day than change them? It is natural that we should be sorry, and you see how sorry we both are, but how much better to be sorry now than then." When, Rosa? When it would be too late, and then we should be angry besides. Another silence fell upon them. And you know, said Rosa innocently, you couldn't like me then, and you can always like me now, for I shall not be a drag upon you, or a worry to you. And I can always like you now, and your sister will not tease or trifle with you. I often did it when I was not your sister, and I beg your pardon for it. Don't let us come to that, Rosa, or I shall want more pardoning than I like to think of. No, indeed, Eddy, you are too hard, my generous boy, upon yourself. Let us sit down, brother, on these ruins, and let me tell you how it was with us. I think I know, for I have considered about it very much since you were here last time. You liked me, didn't you? You thought I was a nice little thing? Everybody thinks that, Rosa. Do they? She knitted her brow musingly for a moment, and then flashed out with the bright little induction. Well, but say they do. Surely it was not enough that you should think of me only as other people did now, was it? The point was not to be got over. It was not enough. And that is just what I meant. This is just how it was with us, said Rosa. You liked me very well, and you had grown used to me, and had grown used to the idea of our being married. You accepted the situation as an inevitable kind of thing, didn't you? It was to be, you thought, and why discuss or dispute it? It was new and strange to him to have himself presented to himself so clearly, in a glass of her holding up. He had always patronized her, in his superiority to her share of woman's wit. Was that but another instance of something radically amiss in the terms on which they had been gliding towards a lifelong bondage? And this, that I say of you, is true of me as well, Eddy. Unless it was, I might not be bold enough to say it. Only the difference between us was that by little and little there crept into my mind a habit of thinking about it instead of dismissing it. My life is not so busy as yours, you see, and I have not so many things to think of. So I thought about it very much, and I cried about it very much too, though that was not your fault, poor boy, when all at once my guardian came down to prepare for my leaving the nun's house. I tried to hint to him that I was not quite settled in my mind, but I hesitated and failed, and he didn't understand me. But he is a good man, and he put before me so kindly and yet so strongly how seriously we ought to consider in our circumstances, that I resolved to speak to you the next moment we were alone and grave. And if I seem to come to it easily just now, because I came to it all at once, don't think it was so really, Eddy, for, it was very, very hard, and, I am very, very sorry. Her full heart broke into tears again. He put his arm around her waist, and they walked by the riverside together. Your guardian has spoken to me too, Rosa dear. I saw him before I left London. His right hand was in his breast, seeking the ring, but he checked it as he thought, if I am to take it back, why should I tell her of it? And that made you more serious about it, didn't it, Eddy? And if I had not spoken to you as I have, you would have spoken to me? I hope you can tell me so,